Marc, dating coach for smart, strong, successful women and your personal trainer for love. Welcome back to the Love You podcast, where you're going to learn everything you need to know about dating, relationships, sex, and men from a man's point of view. My guest today is Bobbi Palmer from datelikeagrownup.com. I usually give the very personalized one, but I'm going to be reading the official bio, but it will not begin to do her justice until you get to hear her speak. She's the founder of Date Like a Grownup, an internationally recognized authority who guides over 40 women to a life filled with passion, peace, and lasting partnership that comes from creating a loving grown-up relationship. Fed up with being single and determined to succeed in her romantic life, as she did in the rest of her life, Bobbi finally figured out the love thing and became a first-time bride at age 47. Now joyfully married, she walks her talk every day. She helps women do what she did, learn how to love and be loved by a good man. With Bobbi as your guide, you receive the compassion of a woman who has firsthand experience of how you feel being single at this time of your life, along with the skill of a highly successful adult educator. As she says, there's nothing wrong with you. There are just some things you don't yet know. Bobbi's been featured on the Today Show, Huffington Post, NPR, Women's World Magazine, Match.com, AARP, eHarmony, and numerous other TV, radio, and print outlets. You can reach her at Bobbi P at datelikeagrownup.com. Enough with the formalities, Miss Bobbi.
Ooh,
right?
that didn't seem so long when it's in writing.
And I read really fast, but pretty darn impressive for people who don't know who you are. I haven't seen you since we had lunch in Santa Monica.
I know.
From what I can see on Facebook, you and Larry seem good.
We're great.
Okay.
That's my my sort of rock, right? My stability. Isn't that how you feel with Bridget? It's like, no matter, with all this craziness that's going on in the world, we won't talk about that on air. It's the stable, lovely thing in my life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's it's underrated, right? Stability is highly underrated.
Yes.
Until shit goes wrong elsewhere and you just need an anchor to hold on to.
Mm-hmm. A safe place to land.
Yes. So I said before, the tease from last week's podcast was, I'm pretty sure Bobbi and I are going to agree on everything. So there might not be fireworks. We usually agree on everything.
I think we could handle that. I think we can do the fireworks thing. Let's do it. Let's try.
I had fireworks with one guest who's a mutual friend, and I felt bad about it, even though I still maintain my position. I feel bad about the perception of two people fighting. It's like two people fighting politics at a New Year's Eve party, which is something I also did this year. The optics on it aren't very good, even if you believe in your position. So
that's right. Well, you should have done what I did, Evan, and just partied with people who agreed with everything you think, and then it's just
stay in the bubble.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I know who you're talking about. By the way, it might be a gentleman that we know.
Yeah, it's right. I'm not gonna.
It was great. It was great.
It was entertaining.
Good. Well, it's good to get different perspectives. And if
I agree.
I'll be right.
And not all perspectives are created equal.
Yeah.
So would you be kind enough to give me the 90-second version of how you got into this kind of work? I mean, your bio hinted at it, but how did you go from 47 and single to being the Pied Piper of middle-aged women, getting them into the relationship of their dreams?
Well, so I was single like 30 years, right? Thinking from the time I was like 17 on, and I won't go through all of the, ups and downs. I think everyone that would be listening or watching they're familiar, but I did it all, great expectations, newspaper ads, therapy here and there. When I hit my mid 40s, I finally realized that I just had it. I mean, my life was good. I was tired of that lingering sadness, that idea that there's just something missing. And like you said, Evan, having this partnership and that stability is so underrated. So what I can see now is that when you don't know how good it can be, it's easier to kind of put it off. And I did that for decades, all the excuses.
Well, what you chose to do in your mid-40s, and I'll let you obviously get to the rest of your bio, is where other people quit, you turned a switch.
I absolutely turned a switch. I can't say there was like this moment when I woke up one morning and said, I want love. But it was It was that lingering sadness that I finally went to therapy about. And in therapy, my therapist helped me realize that what I was missing was the love of a man. That it wasn't about my mother, though, that was always a big part of it. But I had to admit it. I literally, like I have to do with women that I coach, I literally had to have it pulled out of me, against my will almost, that damn it, I wanted this. Unapologetically, fearlessly, can I cuss? I fucking want this. And not only do I want it, here's the scary word, I need it. And
so, again, I want to add to your narrative, right, without derailing it. That admission rubs some people the wrong way, right? You know this, but I'm calling attention to anybody who's listening, who's thinking, I don't need it. I don't need it. I don't need a man. I'm successful. I'm independent. I'm a happy person. It almost feels like a weakness or a capitulation to say, yeah, but you could be happier. Like, there's more to life than this, and it's not a judgment against you,
right?
Or saying, hey, I'm going to be a successful career woman. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's knowing that there is more, and it's not bad or weak to want or need love. It may not be food, water, shelter, but it's right there beneath.
Right there beneath. And what happens is, and this is very true, especially at this time in history, there's this kind of perfect storm for women like myself and boomers, as we might call it. There's this perfect storm of most of us growing up through a time starting with our parents of the 50s and all that stuff that came with it and how we were raised. For girls, be nice, be invisible, please everybody, grow up, get married. And then we went through the women's movement, and then we went through fighting you assholes at work all the time, and that, not you, but
I'll take it.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
I've been called worse.
And then, so this idea and that's sort of what came out of the women's movement too, I think, unfortunately, is this if you need a man, you're weak. You're less than. You shouldn't, a man, a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle, which was attributed to Gloria Steinem, but she didn't say that. So here we are now at, 50, 60, I've got 75-year-old women who I'm working with who are saying, you know what, I kind of want this. You're right. Don't tell anyone, but I need this. And my stand is that was my epiphany number one. You have to admit to yourself and anyone else that you need this to be happy, because if you don't put that line in the sand, you're always giving yourself excuses not to really, really go for it and to keep that wall up. So it's a challenge, because we've learned so much along the way that we shouldn't need this, and it's shameful. To some women, it's truly, they feel shame that they have all that great stuff you talked about and still want more, still want that man thing.
I want to bring this back to you. So you realized, I need this. What action do you take?
So that was epiphany number one. I need this. I need it. So the action I took was, after my that was a big aha, right? Okay, now what do I do? What do I have to do? So I stayed with therapy. I mean, back then there weren't people like us, right, that were helping women. So I stayed with therapy. The next thing that was life-changing is, it was all about me, right? And I talk about this in my ebook. It was all about me. All this, the only commonality throughout these 30 years of all these ups and downs and experiences was about me. So the next thing I did was okay, next step is work on me. Look inside and stop blaming men, and stop blaming how fat my thighs were, and stop blaming, that they just wanted younger chicks, because by then I was 45, and start looking at me. And then when I did that,
what did you figure out?
I figured out that I walked around with what I call my wall of I dare you. That
it sounds very landmark. Is it landmark?
No, I've never, they wouldn't take me, because I was on Prozac, I think, 15 years ago when I tried to get in there.
But it sounds, landmark is actually really great, but it holds up a mirror to you and forces you to see what everybody else sees. And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. And we don't want to do that. I mean, right? Who wants to say it's my fault? But what I found was the power in saying, this is my fault. Like, I put myself in this position in my life. It's not all these other things I've been blaming. And what that did is what my therapist, I just want to call her Anne because I love her. What Anne helped me realize was, that's my power. That's my strength. I can't change all the men. Shit, if it were all the men, what the hell would I do? I'd have to, I don't know, go to another planet, become a lesbian.
Yes. Can't change men. You can't change where we live in California. It's, all those things, you can't change Match.com. So at the end of any personal growth journey, the world remains the same, and you adjust to how the world works.
And you and I, that's obviously what we both do, and is really focus on what's here and what's in your heart and how is that expressing itself. And that was the beginning of a really wonderful journey for me. And I'll tell you something, after these two things, I need the love of a man to be happy, because I had all that other stuff. I had a great life. And it's all about me. The rest of it was pretty easy, relatively. The rest of it was learning new information and new skills and being, courageous in creating new experience creates new truth, right? So in just being able to go out there and do it. And let's talk about it. It is being yourself. It is showing up as your best self. And I want to tell you, Evan, what my therapist, Anne, I did have a moment in my It's All About Me. She said, do you want me to tell you and I've been working with her then for quite some time. Do you want me to tell you what I thought about you the first couple months we worked together? Okay. She says, you came in, you had all, everything was great. Your life was good. Your mother was like this and your this was like that. And you had this problem but you were great. Everything was good. You had it handled. And why you were here, I didn't know. You know the story, right?
I know. I kind of know where you're headed, because it's very common, but
yeah.
Please
so
finish up.
And that was the wall of Ideri, right? And she said, and I realized when I showed up with men on dates, I was like, oh, I'm sorry. It was always like this. I was always late. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm working on this $1 million project, and I've just come back from London. I'm doing this training. And
you got it all together.
I got it all together.
Completely invulnerable. I don't need you.
I don't need you, which to a man, you might as well just castrate him. And she said, this is the big question. What if you had a friend, she asked me, and your friend never needed you? Never needed anything from you. She was always fine.
Yeah, that's great.
That's a good question, right? And I ask that, of course, of my clients all the time. And when you think of it, that's not a friend. That's an acquaintance. But that's not somebody that gets into your heart.
Yeah.
That was a huge aha.
That's great. I'm really glad you shared that. That's an aha for me too. What does it mean to date like a grown-up?
So I have 3 principles of dating like a grown-up. Principle number 1 is balance your head and your heart. Number 2 is show kindness to yourself and the men you meet. I think kindness and compassion is a key. And number 3 is take responsibility for your actions and outcomes. Just like we were just talking about, right? Take responsibility and own it so you can make it the best it can be.
Well, what if guys are just jerks?
That's okay. That's about them. It doesn't mean that you have to react and respond. But what happens is we come with so much junk. And by we, I mean, especially women, of a certain age who spent years, maybe decades at this. We come with so many beliefs, false beliefs, limiting beliefs, especially about men, that are based on, what like Mike did to you when you were in high school, that a lot of times we think men are being jerks, and they're not. They're just being men. And so we, as you know,
we're gonna take a tangent.
That's good. I like this tangent
from the original question, because you've given your Bobbi Palmer Date Like a Grown-Up personal bullet point ethos. I swear to do these things as your client. But how can, and again, I have an answer, but I'm going to try to step out of the way. How can a woman distinguish between when a guy is being a jerk and when a guy is just being a man?
Well, the key is learning about men. The key is truly doing what you help women do, and I, learning about men and not expecting men to act like you or act like women. And you know, the queen of I think Alison Armstrong says, men are not hairy women.
Sure. I've quoted that before.
It's great. I couldn't say it better. So
but there is that expectation.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Well, I wouldn't do what he did, therefore he must be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Just he's different. He has a different worldview. Whatever he did, certainly if he's your boyfriend, wasn't malicious, because your boyfriend has no interest in hurting you, right? If anything, he just has a different perspective or is clueless about how you felt hurt by it. That's usually the case. I think I got this from my wife. You should always assume the best of the guy you're with instead of assuming the worst of him. Because if he's your boyfriend, he wants to please you. Right. The last thing a guy wants to do is be the cause of your tears.
That's right. Right. And I find that's a really important thing in relationship. In my marriage, intention is really important. Really paying attention, really being mindful, I should say, of intention. So when you get that zing, right? When you feel that, he just did this to me, it's, taking a few deep breaths and really having a quick conversation with yourself. Did he just do something to you? Is he just acting like who he is? And if so, what's his intention? And if you're with somebody that you have a good relationship with, the intention is always good. It just may not come out that way, or you may not be processing it that way. And that's what keeps you from that knee jerk, right? That because you're triggered. Oh, he hurt me, right? You get that trigger. That's a time to know to really stop and think about what the reality is. And then comes the communication skills, right? The being able to have a conversation about what was really meant. But so how do you tell if a guy's being a jerk? We all have our own way, but in my world, again, if you can assume good intention, then he's either just he's acting like a jerk, which doesn't mean he is a jerk. He's doing something really dumb or klutzy, because really good guys do really stupid things, just like, oh, by the way, women do. Right? We all do.
Thanks for bringing that up. I didn't want to.
Yeah, better from me. That's the thing. We all do this. Women complain all the time about, I know we don't have to take this turn, but example, women complain all the time about men. All they do is look at pictures. All they do is look at pictures. Well, I go man shopping with my clients. I sit online with them and look at profiles. What do you think they do first? Look at the pictures. So again, it's taking...
Online dating is great at exposing hypocrisy.
Oh, absolutely. But I think what it also exposes is insecurity, right? Because a lot of that comes from what I was doing, pointing the finger out, saying they're doing, and that's sort of that victim kind of, we're getting off and say, can we have like 3 hours to do this? But anyway.
We're all experts in the compromises we have to make as we go through the world, the things we have to trade off on. Okay, he's not as tall as I hoped. He doesn't make as much money as I hoped. He's not as young as I hoped.
Mm-hmm.
We're all conscious of the trade-offs we make. We seem to ignore the compromises that other people have to make to accommodate us. And I think that's an important thing that doesn't get said very often.
I think you're right. And I believe that a lot of times the men and women both that neglect to see that, it's not that they're not mindful, compassionate people. It's just this man-woman sort of they are the enemy thing, or that wall, that's the wall of I dare you. That's the, I'm so afraid of being hurt, like I freaking dare you to hurt me. And if you're going to do it, I'm going to get you first, because that's how I protect myself. So a lot of this,
and it's not even conscious, which makes it hard.
It's not, it's just, you get triggered, and, you know, a guy, yeah, you get triggered, and that consciousness, that balance of head and heart, that's part of that piece of dating like a grown-up, is that is not just feeling your feelings, but really being able to process them and understand them, and then make good decisions. Bring your
not being completely ruled by your feelings.
That's right.
Because just because you feel something doesn't mean it's 100% true, accurate, and reflective of everybody's worldview and experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
I recall, and this is stupid and embarrassing, but I remember I was dating my wife, and she had a pedicure, and she chipped her toenail polish, and she started to cry, and I was like, what are you crying? I mean you don't cry at anything, right? We've been through some stuff. I've never seen you cry, and you're crying about toenail polish, which is the absolute wrong thing for me to say, right? But it was the point of that anecdote was to reflect, oh, my reality, I might not cry about toenail polish.
Right.
But for her, for whatever reason, this was a big deal, and I need to respect the fact that it was a big deal. Right? So it's really like stepping outside yourself and say, well, would I react that way? No. But so what? Right? This is another human being with a different set of priorities and a different worldview and different experience. And if everything turned out to be that drama, it would be really messy. But as it turns out, my wife cares a lot about how she looks. And I don't know, I guess we were going somewhere where she needed open-toe shoes, and it's a change. And it was, again, to this day, I don't quite get it, but I respect it.
Yes. Yes. You don't have to. I get it.
Okay. That's the point is
yeah.
Talking to women, how did you understand where your guy's coming from without making him into the guy who's wrong, into the enemy, the other? He's just another human being trying to navigate his way through, day-to-day grind and find someone who loves him and appreciates him. That's right. Most men.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of that kind of reaction is, again, this comes from people, from men and women, who are really kind, compassionate people with their friends. They would generally always sit back and go, whoa, what's going on with them? I want to understand them. I want to work this out. But somehow with the opposite sex, because of all this like junk we have layered on, and our insecurities and our past rejections and all, blah, blah, our old stories, we get that thing, that trigger, and I used to just react, like blink, like you said, totally unconscious, like blinking, like you're trying to hurt me. And the key is dating like a grown-up is being aware and working on all that past stuff. It doesn't go away. But you can use your smarts, your compassion, your good intentions, and most of all, your idea that you deserve to be happy. And because it's not just kind to him, it's kind to yourself to work on these kind of things. And that was something that I learned early on too, that made huge changes. That wall of I dare you, that was supposedly keeping me safe, was not only unkind to men, it was unkind to myself.
Yes, you were preventing yourself. You put up a wall that you dared people to climb. Nobody climbed it, so you could never find love.
Yeah, and you know how it is, Evan. It's like, the guy who climbs my wall, he'll be the one, right? And no grown-up man, by grown-up man, I always mean good man.
Yeah, he's not climbing a wall. He's going. I have a metaphor in Love You. He goes to the open house with the chocolate chip cookies smell and the music playing inside. Right? It's just a much easier journey than have to scale someone's 10-foot wall because other guys have sucked. I'd love to talk about that tension between, and I see it all the time, and we always have to navigate it, between letting down that wall, right, and being vulnerable, right, and protecting oneself from a mistake, because that's people see it as a black and white issue, and it's not a black and white issue, and I think it often leaves people confused. So how do you help people navigate that, Bobbi?
You learn to trust yourself. It's really what it's about. Like you said, there's this mistrust of men. The mistrust is really about yourself and about making good choices. Because if we really trusted that we would make good decisions and that we would take care of ourselves and that we would do the right thing, then the fear of what everyone else is going to do dissipates, because they can do what they are going to do. It's about how you handle it. So that fear of being a doormat, and boy, I get that. Like, I had such a fear of falling in love because I would just lose myself, right? That's it. We're afraid of losing ourselves. That wasn't about any other man. That was about me allowing myself to do that. So when you have the tools and the skills to really understand what makes you happy, and I have a 6-step system. These are the first 3 steps of my system. Is all the internal work, and it's all about really understanding the value that you have as a woman in the world and with men, and understanding what all your stories are and what triggers you and how you respond, and working on making that positive and turning them into positive stories.
Can you give me an example?
What's up?
Can you give me an example of
the stories?
One woman, one story, anonymously, but one woman, one story, which she had to overcome her previous biases to find the relationship she was looking for? Oh,
sure. There's a particular client that I had, actually, this is a good one. I had a particular client who was, as she said it, fluffy. She was 47 years old. She actually called me and said, or 46, and she actually said, I want to work with you now so I can get married before you did at 47. Anyway, fluffy. She was, a large woman. She had a very powerful career she was an attorney and had a very powerful career. She actually prosecuted rape and murder cases. This is a bold woman. And she had pretty much been single since college. And the last experience she had with a man, he told her she was too fat and he'd never end up staying with her. So of course her stories were, men don't want fat women, so men don't want a woman like me. Her stories were, men don't want powerful, smart women, so men don't want a woman like me, right? And it ultimately, ends up being, it's just not in the cards.
And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's not that her experience is invalid, right? There is a core of truth to that. It's just not the whole truth.
Exactly. And even though, so going through, for instance, my steps, and especially going through step 1, falling in love with your grown-up sexy self. And I put sexy in there, especially for women like this who don't value themselves as an attractive, desirable woman. Going through that and really starting to understand that you're more than your body, or you're more than what you look like, or you're more than whatever it is you've got in your head that's not desirable to men. And really embracing how special you are. And part of that work is also looking around in the world and getting, like you said, the real truth, that not every woman who has a man who loves her is skinny and tall and, right? Or the most popular girl in the room isn't the one who's the most gorgeous. She's the one who's most open. The one, like you said, has that open house. So it's learning new perspectives, then going through the stories. And ultimately what it leads to is that courage in trying new experience. So for her, she learned the process of how do you take that story, turn it into something positive, have that grown up, sort of bring your best self to that trigger when it comes, and had the courage to start going out in the world of men. And first thing she did, Evan, was she joined a meetup for poker players, and it was all men. And she had never played poker, so what a better opportunity to say, could you help me? And truly, she wanted to learn. That was a huge accomplishment of hers. She was petrified. And she started seeing and getting new experience and new truth because they loved her. She was magnificent. Anyway, it's that kind of thing. And then so you have to like start developing your new story, developing the skills to really understand where it came from. I mean, we knew where it came from. That guy in college that said, "You're too fat, I'll never love you."
Yeah, starter forever.
Forever. So, long story shorter, she's been married now like a few years. And step 3, I just have to tell you this one thing. Step 3 is, who is he? Getting past my list. So here she is. She says, I want a cowboy or a policeman. I need a strong man.
Yeah, no, that's the belief, because she's a strong woman. So she needs a man who's stereotypically.
Right. I need myself with a penis.
Oh, that's mine.
That's yours?
That's mine. Maybe this is our source of conflict. I've been saying that for 10 years. I'm not surprised that you arrived at the same conclusion.
Okay. So, but yeah, right. So she's like, I need a cowboy or policeman. What she needed was a really strong man. In my step 3, she learned what a strong man really looks like.
Sure.
And this guy is
not a cowboy or policeman, I'm betting.
Which is shorter and kind of soft-spoken, but boy, he's strong, and she's really happy. She's very. I performed her wedding actually. So that's the story of somebody that had a lot going against her, and she was petrified. I mean, but
yeah, that's a wonderful story. Congratulations to you and to her. And it brings me to sort of my next question: why focus solely on helping women over the age of 40? And do they in fact have it tougher than younger women? Because I kind of have mixed feelings about that, but I'd love to hear how you tackle it.
Yeah. Well, I focus on them because that's what I know, and that's what I accomplished myself. And I also focus on them because I know the pain. I know the extra. This is the tougher. A lot of the part of the tougher part for them. When you're when you're 40, 50, 60 years old, and certainly have never been married. We think women like me who would never been married, we think, well, at least if someone's divorced, some guy picked them, right? They were picked once. And then there's the women who are divorced and had really bad relationships. There's a public shame to it. There's a feeling that's unique to women who are older, that by now, if you haven't found someone to love you, there must be something wrong with you. And they believe it.
And I think it also turns into that same protective layer of defensiveness about it, right? Where the easiest stance to adopt is, well, this is my choice. I don't need a man. I'm perfectly happy. I've got my dog, and I've got my friends, and I've got my country house, and right, it becomes very easy to self-justify why you don't, to deny that inner need, because facing it means facing what could be perceived internally as your own failure, much less externally. It's just easier to pretend this is the way I want it.
Yeah, and it's exactly what I did, right? It's exactly like I described for decades. And it is, excuse me, it is self-fulfilling prophecy. So when you, for women of older women, that is one thing that makes it a lot tougher, is sort of the stigma that's attached to it. And then how do you emotionally manage that stigma, right? So do you, like you said, absolutely. Do you just walk around with that, like, I don't need no stinking man, screw them, or if one comes along, it'll be great, but if not, because if I try really hard and it doesn't work, then I have nothing to blame. I have nowhere to go. And so
it's why people don't sign up for coaching, is because if they sign up for coaching and invest in themselves and they end up in X number of months without a boyfriend, well, then that's the ultimate in failure. When, of course, as you know, that's not the ultimate in failure. You've made great progress by working with a coach. You can't unlearn the things that you've learned or those experiences, but people create these sort of arbitrary, if I don't have a boyfriend by the end of 2017, this whole year has been a failure. And that's not necessarily true. Let's say you had a relationship for 6 months and you decided he wasn't the one and you threw him back in the sea and started all over. That's a success.
Oh, yeah. And actually, this woman that I just told you about, she hadn't had sex for a long time too, of course. She actually went online. She got tons of action. She found a guy within like a month, really fell for him, slept with him, which was a big deal, and he dumped her. And obviously it was really tough for her, but she got through it, and she didn't meet Ron. It was about 18 months. So she got through that, and she kept going. You know, she got the learning from it, and she kept going, and she met her husband. So right, it's that quitting and giving up, and sometimes you don't do it blatantly, right? Sometimes you just do it here, and it shows up in your actions, right? When you're like, well, you know, it'll be great if it happens. Well, you know what? If you're just like, hey, there's people who say when you're not looking, that's when it comes. Yeah, that's bullshit. I don't.
I'm with you. So what do you think is the biggest mistake that women in their 40s and 50s end up making when it comes to dating a relationship? What sort of stands out? Because we could come up with 100 things. What's sort of the one of the main undercurrents that you find between your clients?
Well, one is the idea of not really committing to wanting it and needing it. Mm-hmm. Another really big mistake that we make is women with men, these, you know, women that like you say, strong and successful, you know, accomplished women. They're very independent and they're very competent. So a really big mistake we make, and this comes with not understanding men, is not allowing a man to enhance your life. So, right, because when women talk to me, they're like, I'm so tired of doing it all alone. I just wish I had somebody to help, you know, to help me and to sort of hold me up when I need it and leave me alone when I don't. And so a really big mistake they make after years of being single and doing it all themselves is they don't really make space in their heart, in their home, in their life for a real partner.
Lori Gottlieb's book, Marry Him.
Yeah.
I remember a quote from that. I don't know if it's a quote from me or whatever, but it was something to the effect of, you want your life exactly as it is with them, right? Just with the man dropped in. You don't want to change anything, reallocate time. I just want exactly what I have. The guy's going to sort of fit around me. Mm-hmm. And the man that you like and respect doesn't, because he's got his own life. He's not just going to seamlessly bend around you and all of your whims. He's got his own rich, full, independent life as well.
Right.
There has to be some give and take. And the only guy that you're going to get is, if you want to stay exactly you, is going to be a guy who's probably an opinionless weakling. Mm-hmm. Yes, dear, whatever you say, dear. I have no friends. I have no job. I have no opinions. That's the only person where your life doesn't have to change.
That's right. Really sexy guy for us.
You know, the person who says my best friend is my dog. Well, of course your best friend's your dog. Your dog's not going to talk back to you.
That's right.
I like dogs more than I like men. Well, yes, because men have their own independent things. They're not just going to do what you want because you're feeding them.
Yeah.
They'll do a lot of what you want because you're feeding them, but not everything.
Yeah.
So it's always, and again, we could flip this thing around. We're both coaches for women, and if I coach men, we'd be having much the same conversation. I think it's important to say.
I agree.
Right? Yeah. People think, oh, we're picking on women. We're not picking on women. We just happen to be coaches for women. But men have the exact same stuff where they get ground into, well, this is, you know, I'm divorced. This is how my life looks. And they don't make any accommodations to be good partners themselves.
That's right.
And they wonder why they're still alone and lonely. So it's not, this isn't gender specific, but I just felt the need to acknowledge that.
I'm glad you did. And the other thing that's important in this equation is this idea of for women, to let a man enhance your life means allowing him to help you, right? Allowing him to add to your life. And the vast majority of women, and I'm guessing this is true of you, the vast majority of these women who are independent, the history they have with men is attracting narcissists and losers, like the guy like you just described, you know, selfish guys. And what they need to understand, what you people here need to understand, women, is when you ask for nothing, that's what you get. You get nothing. And so the good men, the men who want to enhance your life, my husband, if I didn't learn to be a good receiver, if I didn't learn that I needed to let him in and enhance my life. By the way, I had a great life. My life didn't change a ton. But it's so much better. Yeah, I don't spend
because you're sharing it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't spend all my time with my girlfriends, but I still spend a lot of Saturday. We're going out. I mean, it's you marry the right guy and you get to live the life you want to live.
Yeah.
So, but Larry, he never would have picked me if I was still that, I don't need no stinking man, I just want to have fun with you. I don't need anything from you, gal. It wouldn't have made him feel like he was a man and like he was, accomplishing something with me.
Men want to feel needed, and that's something that is important to be understood. In the same way you pointed out, everybody needs to feel needed, but somehow we forget that when it comes to dating. We're focused on what we want. I want him to be X, Y, and Z, and he has wants too. And his role in the world, he doesn't know what it is if you don't need him.
Yes. So that's a really big piece of our challenges at this time of life, is sort of having this history behind us, all the stuff, all the stories, the independence, the kind of, relationship with men that's been more adversarial. And so it creates this fear. And what opens it up, like I said, is doing this work in my first three steps, is learning to trust yourself. So you know what, no matter what happens with men, no matter what they do to you, you trust that you're going to take care of yourself. And one other thing, Evan, that I think is really important. Sorry. I get excited. The first thing I talk to, when I talk to a woman about accepting her into my coaching, one thing I need her to understand is that she needs to focus on herself and give herself permission to make it all about her. Because although generally these women are really successful and blah, blah, in business, they're still pleasers. They still grew up to be pleasers, and they still grew up thinking in their teenage years that I need a man, I want a man to like me, and I'll twist, like a pretzel to get it done, and blah. And so when you can focus on making yourself happy first, and you know what it is that makes you happy, not just that he's like taller than you or funny or has charisma, but he's stable, he's a good man, blah, blah, the grown-up stuff. And then you have the skills to understand how to make good decisions for yourself. Then you don't have to be afraid of men. You don't have to be afraid of dating. You don't have to be afraid of getting in a relationship because you'll screw it up or repeat old, habits or any of that. That's what changes women's lives.
I like it. We're going to finish up this podcast with some discussions about middle-aged women, the mistakes that they've made, and the compromises that they've made to find happiness. So I always find it's easiest, not in a narcissistic way, it's just easiest to talk about oneself. Your story is not entirely different than mine. You and your husband are mismatched on paper, right?
Oh, yeah.
Connection, really, no one would say, oh, these two people are meant to be together for the rest of their lives. And yet you have a marriage which is a model for other women. How did you figure out how to compromise, how to accept him, and how to make that work?
It's funny because the idea of compromise doesn't seem like something I did. What happened was, and I talk again like about who is he getting past my list? My list wasn't about that stuff that is usually on paper. My list, I always work on feelings. What do you need to feel in order to be happy? And when you're with a man in the moment, really focusing and really being open to feeling your feelings. So in terms of, did I compromise? I didn't compromise. He just didn't look like my old list. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
And that's a useful distinction for everybody. You and I say virtually the same things with different language. But you said you're mismatched on paper.
Yeah.
Someone had a previous list that they've been spending their whole life chasing.
Right.
You got to throw out that list. So what was on that list that you didn't get here? Someone would call that compromise. Obviously, you're happy.
Yeah.
I say you compromise your way into happiness. So someone's going to think, I have to give something up to get something.
Right.
What can I give up? What did you give up to get happy?
I gave up my old childish ideas of what happy look like. I mean,
Which are?
He has to be taller than me. He's got to be funny, he has to like entertain me, charming. I always went for the charmers, really smart, all that stuff that makes a guy great on a date, but has no reference to how he'll be as a mate.
I am so with you, but I'm also going to respond for the women who are dying to respond to you.
Okay, do.
So you're saying that you're going out with a guy who's short and not smart and not charming and not funny? That sounds awful.
That sounds boring and awful.
Right? Because that's what people are hearing.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not the truth. So what's the nuance? Because it's not that he's not those things.
Right.
Right? He's just not in the top 5% of those things.
Right. And that's not his, he doesn't lead with that, right? The guys that lead with that are the guys that are the good dates, right? They're not
a good show.
So they're the shiny guys. I call them the shiny guys. So we all like the shiny guys. So here's the difference. The difference is, here's a better way to help them understand. My list included feelings of being safe, being valued, being heard, being understood, being number one. I needed that. I've never had that in my life ever until I met him. So those are examples. So my list wasn't physical attributes or what his education was. It was all about feelings. And when I was with him, I felt those feelings. And on paper, I'm a Valley girl. I was 47 years old, had never been married, no kids. He was a Midwestern guy, used to have a pig farm, has 2 kids, 4 grandchildren, been married twice. Right? Who knew? But the feeling that I had with him was exactly how I wanted to feel. And I always say, if he had his list and if he had his way and I had my way, he would be about 3 inches taller and about $1 million, a few $1 million richer. And I would be about 40 pounds thinner and a few $1 million richer. That's kind of what we gave up.
To get happy.
Yeah.
I love how your stuff coincides with mine. I mean, you're saying things that are the central core points of my signature Love You program, right? I mean, your list, I say in my program, safe, heard, and understood. We're really talking about a feeling, not an attribute. And I just think I'm always astounded when I talk to other experts and coaches who give amazing advice from a different perspective. We've never talked about this, and we still land in the very same place. So thank you. It's very encouraging and inspiring and validating to see someone else who's had such great personal and professional success teaching the same ideas.
Thank you. And I love your work, Evan. So we're lucky to do what we do.
I agree. Speaking of luck, what do we have to give away to our lucky listeners of today's Love You podcast? This is your opportunity to tell people how they could find you, become your fan, sign up to get advice from your website, give away a free offer. The floor is yours.
So I have, what I want to give them is I want to give them an opportunity to go ahead and start shedding these layers of stories that are getting in your way, right? So I have a program called Dump Your Love Junk. Start anew feeling refreshed, optimistic, and ready for love. And it's a 7-day e-course. So this is about me guiding you through beginning to, again, change your stories and really start being able to open your heart and open your mind to the wonderful opportunity of being in love and of loving, which can be just as scary. So go to datelikeagrownup.com/lovejunk, LOVEJUNK. Does that sound nasty, love junk?
Yes, it does.
It does. So datelikeagrownup.com/lovejunk. And I have a special offer for you. It's $27, but I have a special offer just for people who are here with Evan and myself. So in the coupon field, just put in the word Evan, and it's all about you. And I want to offer this program to you for free as a gift.
Dude, nice.
Yeah, it's a great.
I didn't even see that coming. That's exciting.
Yeah, well, your listeners, I mean, they're here and they're committed to learning and committed to growing, and there is so much value. I mean, it's like my first couple steps, that opens up all the possibilities. So
That's
you and
great.
I both, we're just
That's great. I trust you, and that's why you're here. And I'm sure they're in good hands if they take your free e-course. So thank you so much for being my guest on the Love You podcast.
great.
I'm very grateful to have friends like you in the world who are doing great work. My name is Marc. This is the Love You podcast. Next week, we're talking about what you should expect on Valentine's Day. It's about that time of year. So be sure to ask your question on my website about setting realistic expectations for your boyfriend on this Hallmark holiday. You can do that by going to evanmarckatz.com/podcast guest to see upcoming topics and ask me your most pressing questions. If you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and YouTube. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter at evanmarckatz. And finally, you get the most free advice by giving me your name and email address at evanmarckatz.com. Give me your name and email, and I will send you free dating and relationship advice until you don't need dating and relationship advice and you get the love you deserve. So thank you so much. Thank you to Bobbi, and I will see you again next week on the Love You podcast.